Basketball fans, welcome into another episode of Talkin Grizz. This is our off-season edition. We're talking drafts and prospects, and our mock draft now. We're at number 9. So I am welcoming from Sacramento, Mr. Jason Jones, the Kings and NBA writer for The Athletic. Third time on the show, so a big friend of the show. Thanks for coming on again.
No problem.
Okay, so we're talking number 9, the Sacramento Kings. They had a 31-41 season. They've got a lot of needs going into next season. Thin on the wing. They need kind of this long-term answer at the center. They could use someone who is this like lockdown defender when you're looking at next year. So let's start with a couple of the names that are floating around in that number 9 spot, because it felt like this year's draft was like 1 to 5 was kind of locked in, and now we're getting names thrown around everywhere when it comes to like 6 to 20. The first name that comes to my head when I'm looking at all the mock drafts that are being made around the league in terms of needs for the Kings is Corey Kispert from Gonzaga. He just worked out with the Sacramento Kings last week. He's like this great three-point shooter, not as versatile, I think, as the Kings would like, but what have you heard surrounding that name?
I mean, he can shoot, and the one thing this offense loves is guys that can shoot the ball. Mm-hmm. And that's, I mean, for the Kings, it's funny because for the years the Kings just didn't have shooting at all. Now they're constantly going out and finding shooting, which is a good thing for them, just because when you have a De'Aaron Fox and a Tyrese Halliburton, you have to be able to space the floor for those guys. So anyone who can shoot makes sense, but like you said, they have so many different needs. I think the way I see this team looking, if they had to choose, I think they got to go defense. They got to get – they are just so small on the wing in general. They're not athletic enough on the wing, and just defensively, they just get torched. And some of that's going to have to improve just with guys like De'Aaron and Tyrese getting better. But you can't go into a season where, like they did last season, where they basically had one legit wing, Harrison Barnes. And then outside of that, you want to play small, but it's hard to play small when – your only real good, viable 3-4 option is Harrison, and that now you're kind of saying, do I put a 6'4" guy like Buddy Hield at the 3 who gets attacked defensively? So it's just they've got a lot of different ways they can go, and then the center position is just could be wide open, going into next season.
Let's take a look at kind of that defensive end. The name that pops up when we talk about defense is Jalen Johnson. But he also comes with this red-orange flag. I feel like people are worried about his commitment or his attitude after leaving Duke early, but he does guard multiple positions. He's like super versatile. He can score, he can rebound. Do you see him fitting in with the Kings? Is that a red flag that he left Duke early? Do you see it as more of a yellow-orange flag?
I mean, I think it's with this generation of players, I mean, we all know most of them don't want to go to college anyway. They're forced to go to college for a year. And I'm actually surprised we don't see more guys leaving school early to say, you know what, it's not working. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of times, at least with him, people are surprised he would leave Duke. But I wouldn't overreact and make that like a red flag. Maybe it's more of a yellow, because it's kind of like you knew you had to go to school for a year. You couldn't find somewhere that maybe you were going to fit for the entire year. But I don't think that's going to be a thing where they're going to say, you know what, we really like him, but you should have stayed at Duke for the whole year. We can't take you. I don't think that's going to be a detriment against him. But like you said, can guard multiple spots, and anyone who can guard, the Kings are going to look at.
So we mentioned defense, we mentioned wing, we mentioned center. So there's so many needs for this Kings team. What other names do you have that you think are floating around right now?
I mean, I've seen Franz Wagner pop up because one of the holes in their offense is they need a good young stretch 4. I mean, they've tried to make Marvin Bagley into that, and he's becoming a better 3-point shooter, but you still can't only have one of those guys, and that's kind of been one of the problems with the Kings. They'll have one guy who does that, and if that one guy isn't playing, well, they have no other option. So I think they could, a guy like that would make sense, even though he's not a need, and I'm not even sure if he gets to them. Davion Mitchell makes sense because he's the best he's the best perimeter on-ball defender in the draft.
Yep.
And so, I mean, he just makes sense with that, just because you can always, down the road move a guy, and I think if he defends the way in the pros, the way he did in college, De'Aaron say it's like 6'3", 6'4", but I've seen De'Aaron defend small forwards. So you can get some defensive flexibility. Tyrese Halliburton's almost 6'5". So, I mean, you can do some different things if you get a guy like Mitchell. So with them, it's really kind of any direction possible. The problem for them is they're picking ninth. And to me, the perfect pick for them would be Evan Mobley, who won't be at 9 because they're going to need a center. I mean, there's a good chance they lose Rashawn Holmes, who has been their starting for center for the last 2 years. Maybe you slide Marvin Bagley over to the center spot. Maybe you rely on someone like Davion Jones, who you signed last year on a 10-day, then kept him for the rest of the year. But they're going to need another big, a guy who can switch out defensively, guard multiple spots. And it's funny, we keep saying guard multiple spots because when you have and almost a historically bad defense like they did last year, anyone who will play defense will get a chance to play on this team next season.
Is there any chance they trade up, do you think, or you think they'll pick 9th?
I think if they trade, they're trading down or out to try to get some immediate help.
Okay.
I mean, because if they trade up, I guess to me the perfect guy for them to trade up to get would be a Mobley, and they don't have enough without giving up Fox and Halliburton to move into the top 5. Okay. You're not going to get a team to take Buddy Hield to 9 to get to number 3. So, I think if I could see them trading down or just, taking that pick and packaging it with a player to get a veteran who can kind of fill some of those holes right away, because pretty much, they've missed the playoffs 15 straight years. And they don't want that record for 16, even though this entire group obviously hasn't been there for the whole 15 years. No one wants to be on the team that sets the record for the most consecutive years of missing the playoffs. I mean, the Clippers had to play in 3 cities to make that happen. And the Kings don't want any piece of that record.
Yeah. We want you to be covering some playoff basketball.
That would be a nice change. I mean, I've never had to do it before, but, I'd welcome that.
So let's do our mock draft now. You are on the clock for this number 9 pick. I'm going to put up right now what the draft looks like for everyone at home. That means, unfortunately, you can't take Mobley. You can't take Davion Mitchell. So you are on the clock for number 9. The Sacramento Kings choose
James Bouknight. Look at him and the way he plays. He's a wing player, can be dynamic, can do multiple things, and that's right up what the Kings need, right up their alley. They need more guys like that on the perimeter. I mean, they're really a small team. They're really a small team. You look, last, I think when they played Philadelphia, Coach Luke Walton made a point that their starting center was actually smaller than Ben Simmons.
That's a problem.
So, I mean, if they can just start adding size on the wing, that would help their defensive problems a lot, just because right now they're just small. Buddy Hield is, generously listed at 6'4". So teams attacked him, all the time on defense. You had teams who were, and Buddy was, I can't criticize his effort. It's just that it's not big enough. So, if you're going to have him go against a 6'6", 6'7" guy, it's going to be a long night for him, and teams are going to constantly attack him, and it's going to affect him on the other end. Buddy got that contract because he's a shooter, not because they thought he was Tony Allen. So they've got to get more help, get more versatile on the wing. And to me, if James falls to them at 9, they have to take him. They just have to, just because Harrison Barnes is, going at, he's getting closer to 30 than he is 20. And Harrison's not old by any stretch, but you still got to start building that depth up, because one of their issues they had last season, especially when they went on losing streaks, was that they basically had a six and a half player rotation for a good part of the season. I mean, they addressed some of that depth at the trade deadline with DeLon Wright last year, but they still got to get more depth, just because you just can't go into a season expecting to make the playoffs or get into the play-in tournament when you're basically relying on 7 guys all season, which is what they did most of last season.
Yeah, a lot of young guys too who are just starting to get that postseason. Well, no, they don't have postseason experience, but they're trying to get towards that in the second half.
Yeah. That's why I wouldn't be surprised they traded that pick to get some postseason experience on the team to kind of help this group. Because what I see a lot of times when I watch these guys play, you don't have enough guys that just know how to play.
Jason, thank you so much for your insight and analysis. And Grizzlies fans will be back tomorrow for more mock draft coverage.